Wi-Fi produced a video about item duplicating. And yeah, this is a topic that I actually see in the comment section quite a lot. So let's watch the video, shall we?
Grinding sucks. And I feel this is a sentiment that many gamers will agree on, because having to do the same mind-numbing task for hours on end just to be able to do another possibly mind-numbing task is not exactly what would constitute as fantastic gameplay. Souls games, and especially Elden Ring, are not strangers to this concept, with some items requiring hours of Thanos snapping the same enemy again and again just to acquire a red glowy stick. But if I told you that there's a method called item duping to avoid hours of brain-smoothing diarrhea and basically achieve the same results, would you try it? If you did, some gamers would probably compare you to a war criminal.
No! What the hell are you doing?
And that's because to some gamers, item duping is considered cheating.
I mean, it is. It's just that it is so heavily injected into the culture of Souls games that people who do not do that are usually not really well acclimated with the, for example, PvP community, and that's it. Everyone is literally just doing that, either in the form of cheat engine on PC or just transferring items to each other on consoles.
So we had to ask ourselves, is item duping really cheating? Let's find out. A ver, las cosas como son. A nadie le gusta romperse el orto por 7 horas para conseguir la espada de la poronga sagrada. Es un hecho, gente. It's un puto hecho. Fortunately, Miyazaki coded in a way to potentially
What the fuck is this? That's so random.
avoid having to grind like a dummy once you already beat the game and want to simply chill with a new build or character, as long as you have an internet connection, of course. For those unfamiliar, Elden Ring allows you to remove items from your inventory in 2 different ways: by discarding them, which basically erases the item out of existence, or by leaving them, which places them on the ground as a shiny to pick up. This may seem a bit odd to you if you're playing by yourself, because there is literally zero use to this, but once you remember that the game is partially a multiplayer experience, it suddenly hits you. Con esto puedes compartir cosas con los demás. Mira qué bueno. Not all items can be dropped, but it's safe to say that all of the important ones can. Now, since you're a very smart boy and your IQ is higher than the average chimpanzee, you realize that you could, in theory, make a copy of your save file, drop your friend your precious rivers of blood, reload your save file, and then have your friend drop you your rivers of blood back, thus now possessing 2 oversized tampons instead of 1. Congratulations! You just did some good old-fashioned duping. Dropping stuff has been a feature since the oldest of Souls games, allowing players to exchange items between each other or simply giving gifts to those.
I just want to point out, Bloodborne didn't have this mechanic, as probably the only, essentially a Souls game, yeah? Made by From Software, and oh my god, making builds in Bloodborne was such a pain, man. Farming all the gems and stuff was just painful.
Ephemeral teammates we met in our journeys. At least that's what we believe was the intended use, according to Miyazaki's description on co-oping. However, gamers were quick to realize that this feature was more useful than intended, as using it to duplicate useful items would save tons of time on build creation, especially when you consider that some items can only be obtained once per playthrough or are easily missed. One example of this is the hammer talisman dropped by recusant Henricus in Limgrave. If you happen to beat Margit before ever fighting this guy, say goodbye to that talisman until
Oh, really? I actually didn't know that.
New Game Plus. Just don't go missing it twice, you silly goose. You have access to your save files on all platforms where the game is available as well, so we can fairly assume that duping is a feature that was pretty much intended by the developers as extra means of build crafting. We would have preferred a better farming method though, but From Software seems to be going backwards with some game mechanics.
Well, not many people like that one.
But of course, we wouldn't really be discussing this topic today if a gamer duping their entire build had 0 consequences on anyone else's game experience. Or maybe we would, because people like to complain about nearly anything. But that's not the point. If you happen to take the easy route on a game like Final Fantasy XII, where obtaining rare items can take longer than a galaxy's lifespan, cheating in all these hard-to-get gear and items would only affect you and nobody else but you when playing the game. In Souls games, though, gamers can be confronted by other players trying to halt their progress. These are called invaders.
Hello?
And have been a staple of Souls games for nearly 15 years by now. It is usually the norm for invaders to use optimized builds when invading in order to mitigate the already big disadvantages they have when facing multiple people.
I mean, is it so? It's just like, in my eyes, just duplicating items is just a way of having a comfort and nice looking inventories, yeah? It's inventory that is, like, for example, filled with like a full pages of certain swaps. It's just looking nice and it's just more comfortable to navigate, and that's about it. It's a matter of comfort. I don't really think that if you would optimize your build properly for invasions, even though you would create like your character legitimately, I don't think you would be at that big of a disadvantage, especially if you would be rolling back your save file so you could continuously use your consumables like meat dumplings for one, yeah?
These optimized builds consist of, well, everything that is useful in PvP. Gamers that get invaded by these players will sometimes lose and get understandably angry at the fact that their executor had a huge supply of starlight shards, golem arrows, drawstring greases, boluses and pots at their disposal.
Everything limited to one invasion when it comes to the amount of use. Besides crafting items, that's actually true though. But yeah, like this, like item crafting mechanic is kind of fucked overall.
While this can be a valid complaint, it is usually not the sole reason why 3 people lost against one single dude with a lot of shit in his pockets. Duping is merely a big time saver. Let's pretend you want to farm golem arrows. They have an incredibly low drop rate, and oftentimes farming a lot of them will take hours on end. So if after finally obtaining some arrows, you decide to just dupe them with the help of a friend instead of farming for 69 more eons, why wouldn't you? And it's not like having them in your inventory will make you magically win every fight either. Tener el arsenal a tu disposición no te garantiza la victoria. Mucho menos en invasiones donde tenés a 3 monos con navajas persiguiéndote todo el tiempo y al más mínimo error te rompen el orto.
This clip is...
What the fuck?
Tienen que saber cómo usar el arsenal para poder ganar. No sirve con solamente tenerlo.
Typical.
Un poquito de coherencia, por favor. Oftentimes, the complaints don't make sense at all. Some gamers complain about invaders with endgame gear in low-level invasions, when the best weapons for invading at low level, as well as some of the best ashes of war, can be all obtained as early as Limgrave. Best example of this being the Dragon Halberd, obtained after beating the Dragonkin's soldier in Siofra River, a relatively early boss. About 90% of low-level invasions can be won simply by using this thing, and you can obtain it in like 30 minutes after starting the game. There are a few exceptions, though. Scarlet Rot can be cured by either the Flame, Cleanse Me incantation, or Preserving Boluses. Both the tools to inflict rot and the things used to cure it are not available until much later in the game. So, naturally, some gamers will abuse this and use Scarlet Rot against low-level hosts in the early game who still...
I mean, like, this shit is mostly abusable, especially because of the fact that you don't have any resistances on low level, yeah?
still don't have access to proper anti-rot items, making the invasion very hard for the host. Although these rot invaders can be beaten, it is still pretty much scummy to do this against defenseless hosts, but not against overleveled phantoms, though. Seriously, fuck those guys. Manga de forra. But overleveled phantoms are not the only thing you should be worrying about when invading in low level, because you know what sucks too? Steam retail prices. I mean, have you seen how much some of these games cost? Fortunately, I wouldn't worry too much if I were you, Lil
Instant
Poggy.
gaming?
Instant gaming has got your back. As a website with huge thanks to Instant Gaming for sponsoring this video. Let me ask you something. Would it really make a difference to the invaded person if the invader got the things the normal, boring way? Would it make their defeat any less stingy? And I say defeat because no one complains when they win. Big coincidence, huh? All item duping does in high level is preventing you from having to restock on shit every 5 or 6 invasions. I mean, do you know how fast you can run out of shit in this game? Before you could buy strings in the DLC, drawstring greases were one of the most valuable items, and you'd be consuming them as if you were house poppin' Vicodin. Hosts don't really need them because they have the numbers advantage. So what difference would it make to you if someone spent 15 hours or 15 minutes getting their drawstring greases? We don't think that duping really matters that much on any level bracket, with the exception of rot in low level though. It is just the natural consequence of the game having a very poor farming system. There is actually zero reason for every consumable to not be purchasable on any game merchant. And
Well, let me tell you a story about certain game that's called Dark Souls 2. You see, in Dark Souls 2, a lot of items that are normally very limited on the first playthrough, on the first NG, are not limited at all on NG+. You can buy pretty much infinite amount of these as long as your character is on NG+, which was extremely good system because for people that want to like continuously play the game and invade others and so on, they have like an easy way and access to these items that normally they would have to spend a lot of time farming. Overall, like Dark Souls 2 had way better farming methods anyway, but that's not the point. Point being, like, you had like possibility to just to easily access items that on the first playthrough they were limited, and it makes sense they are limited on the first playthrough because like this is like kind of like the first moment you are beating through the game, and limiting you possibilities and so on makes it so like your experience might be potentially just more interesting, yeah? And after that, when you're just going through the game on the same character on the NG+, I guess like at this point you want to experiment around. So unlocking all these items that normally are kind of hard to get on the normal NG just makes sense, and I absolutely don't understand why Golem Arrows, for example, are not available to buy on the NG+. It really would make a lot of sense. Like, From Software really dropped the ball when it comes to not only like craftables, but overall like items accessibility. For one, you have the rod boluses, yeah? You know how much time you have to spend on the average to get yourself items to craft one rod bolus? Around fucking 20 minutes. 20 minutes per one rod bolus, when one fucking dragon breath can just immediately cause the rot on you. Like, yeah, and of course you have like a flame cleanse me, but flame cleanse me is just inferior option, and in the middle of the fight you literally shouldn't be casting it.
Crafting can be a pain in the ass once you already beat the game and just want to engage in PvP or co-op. Dale, flaco, no me voy a poner a juntar plantitas 20 horas seguidas como una pelotuda para poder craftear 99 bolas anti-rot para que no me rompan el ojete en invasiones. Quiero ponerme a empalar Kevins ya, no pasado mañana. Concha de tu madre. And if you still somehow feel you're at an unfair disadvantage when facing invaders that dupe items, maybe you should try duping as well. It's a tool available to anyone, after all. In conclusion, can we really say that item duping is cheating? No, not really. Even if you use Cheat Engine to pop in your stuff, it's still pretty much the same thing. People who don't know how to play will still have low chances of winning, no matter how much stuff they dupe in. And people who already beat the game deserve not having to go through the whole thing again just to craft a different build for a specific activity. FromSoft gave everyone the tool, and we can use it however we want. Just like how people summon to beat bosses and such. Whether you decide to use it or not is entirely up to you. And getting mad if someone else does use it won't help you at all. If you want to get mad at FromSoft for not implementing a better farming system. En serio, loco, ¿por qué carajo no puedo comprar bolas?
Okay, so I would say that it's not really as simple as that, cheating or not. It's like you have a lot of layers to it. First of all, who you cheating on? Are you cheating on other players? Are you cheating on the PvE? Because like you just technically skip the farming and that's it. It doesn't really matter in my opinion. It's what matters is what is acceptable by the community and also what is not punishable or just not being punished by From Software nor Bandai Namco. And ultimately, yeah, From Software nor Bandai Namco never actually banned anyone for duping items. And yeah, this is just integrated into Souls community for ages. If you are not doing this because of some sort of moral dilemmas that you have, then you are just doing disservice to yourself. Because no one, absolutely no one with half a functioning brain that is actively playing PvP or co-op in this game is going to be upset at you for duping items. Really as simple as that. I think that duping items that are farmable is pretty acceptable, but items unique per playthrough such as Starlight Shards or Maker's Blessings is kinda cheaty. You could say so. I get it. That being said, yet again, if you would, for example, just make yourself totally legit character and just roll back the save after invading session, then you never would actually run out of the Starlight Shards and Blessings, honestly. Fairly, assuming that duping is a feature intended by devs is wild, LMAO. Like, I see like some people here being like, oh my god, the mental gymnastics. Yeah, because, dude, listen, From Software is definitely just a bunch of idiots and they have no idea what they are doing. Definitely didn't remove that feature from Bloodborne. Definitely didn't bring it back in Dark Souls 3 and now in Elden Ring. From Software probably is aware of the case of duping, whereas I wouldn't say it's intended feature. I just would say that it is commonly accepted by developers as well. Otherwise, we would have action against it. That's for sure. What is, I guess, like worth to mention is sometimes people that are just fucking scrubs, honestly, like leave the comments of the type saying that as if duping would allow you to actually have infinite amount of consumables at hand during invasions, and that's unfair, which is just not true because you're limited to certain amount of use of items per invasion. This entire topic is basically just people that are not integrated well with the PvP community, essentially disliking certain idea because for whatever reason they think about Souls games as if that would be MMORPG or whatever, where you're supposed to farm and shit before engaging in the multiplayer like activities. Well, it's not this type of game. And lack of action by From Software against these type of things like duping or usage of the cheat engine to speed up the builds just speaks for itself. And that's pretty much it. Just no point to be upset, honestly. And if you are, then you are only doing this service to yourself.